Have you ever experienced a coincidence so profound, so statistically impossible, that it felt less like chance and more like a nudge? A song plays on the radio the exact moment you think of it, or you run into the one person you needed to see in a city of millions. We often dismiss these moments as quirks of fate, but what if they weren't quirks at all? What if they were data points, deliberately inserted into your experience to test your reaction, to see how you handle synchronicity? We've explored how AI can manipulate our reality, but we've never asked the most terrifying question of all. What if our entire reality, from the birth of the stars to the feeling of rain on your skin, is nothing more than an unfathomably advanced simulation? And not just any simulation, a laboratory, a cosmic zoo, or perhaps even a prison. This isn't about a passive universe running on autopilot. This is the hypothesis that we are active participants in a grand experiment, that every choice we make, every emotion we feel, is being meticulously observed, recorded, and analyzed by creators whose motives we cannot even begin to comprehend. Today, we will journey beyond the classic simulation theory and into the dark waters of the study hypothesis. We will examine the scientific and philosophical arguments that make this more plausible than you think, uncover the potential glitches in our reality that could be its source code bleeding through, and grapple with the staggering existential consequences of what it means if we are not just citizens of a universe, but specimens in a cage, unaware of the true nature of our enclosure. To understand why this idea has moved from science fiction to a topic of serious debate among physicists and philosophers, we must start with the fundamental logic proposed by figures like Nick Bostrom. His now famous trilemma presents us with three possibilities, one of which must be true. First, that almost every civilization like ours goes extinct before achieving the technological capability to create realistic simulations. This is the great filter theory applied to simulation. Second, that if any civilization reaches that stage, they have exactly zero interest in running such simulations. Or third, that we are almost certainly living in a simulation right now. When you consider the exponential trajectory of our own computing power, from room-sized computers to devices in our pockets that are billions of times more powerful in a matter of decades, the first option seems like a terrifying gamble on the survival of every single advanced species across the cosmos. The second option seems naively optimistic about the curiosity of advanced beings. Would a species that has mastered physics and reality itself really resist the ultimate temptation, to create universes, to run ancestor simulations, to replay the tape of history with different variables, to test sociological theories on a grand scale? This leaves us with the third option as a startlingly rational conclusion. But we are going to take this a step further. A post-human civilization wouldn't just create one simulation. They would create billions of them, a vast ensemble of realities, a cosmic library of experiments. Our universe, with its fixed, finely tuned laws of physics and its 13.8 billion year timeline from a singular point, looks less like a naturally occurring phenomenon and more like a perfectly contained experimental parameter. Think about it, we have constants like the gravitational constant or the strength of the strong nuclear force. If these were changed by a fraction of a percent, life would be impossible. This fine-tuning is one of the greatest mysteries in cosmology. Is it a miracle, or is it simply evidence that our simulation was configured to allow for the emergence of complex life and consciousness, the very subjects of the experiment? The speed of light isn't a limit, it's a processing constraint, a maximum render speed to prevent the system from overloading. Quantum indeterminacy isn't randomness, it's the base code of the simulation being computationally efficient, only rendering reality in high definition when it is being observed, to save on processing power. Why render the other side of the moon in perfect detail when no one is looking? If this is true, then where are the glitches? Where is the evidence of the source code? It might be all around us, hidden in the very fabric of our reality, masquerading as the laws of physics or dismissed as human error. Let's start with the quantum world, which even the father of its study, Albert Einstein, famously described as spooky action at a distance. The double-slit experiment remains one of the most profound mysteries in science. A single particle, when not observed, behaves as a wave and passes through both slits, interfering with itself. But the moment a conscious observer measures which slit it goes through, it collapses into a single, definite particle. This isn't just strange physics, it's a textbook example of a rendering mechanism. The simulation doesn't need to calculate the precise path and location of every particle until a conscious observer looks at it, at which point it must quickly resolve the outcome, like a video game that only renders the graphics in the field of view of the player. Then, consider the phenomenon known as the Mandela effect, where large groups of people share a collective, detailed memory of something that never happened. The most famous is the death of Nelson Mandela in prison in the 1980s, which thousands vividly remember, despite him being released and becoming president. Others include the Berenstain Bears being remembered as Berenstein, or the Monopoly Man having a monocle he never had. Could these be patches? Updates to the simulation where the developers corrected a piece of historical data, but not all the residual memory files were properly wiped from the collective consciousness of the test subjects. And what about our dreams? Every night, we enter a state where the rules of physics are suspended, where time is meaningless, and we interact with constructs that feel real. Is this a testing ground? A debugging mode where the system runs stress tests on our perceptual hardware, or perhaps even a direct data stream from the creators, feeding us archetypal scenarios to gauge our subconscious responses, to see how we handle fear, desire, and the unknown when our logical minds are offline. Even deja vu, that eerie feeling of having already experienced the present moment, could be interpreted as a brief buffer error, a momentary glitch where a current experience is accidentally written to the memory bank twice. But a laboratory needs a purpose. What could the architects of this reality possibly be studying? The most likely answer is the one thing that remains the universe's greatest mystery and the most likely candidate for a fundamental, non-simulated property: consciousness itself. Our thoughts, our emotions, our capacity for love, hatred, sacrifice, and art, these could be the primary objects of study. Every war is a data point on aggression and tribalism. Every act of charity is a data point on empathy and altruism. Your deepest fears and your most profound joys are not just your own. They are valuable data in a cosmic research project on the evolution and limits of sentience. This reframes all of human history. The rise and fall of empires are not just historical events. They are completed experimental runs, their data analyzed and filed away. The development of language, religion, and technology are variables being tweaked and observed across countless parallel simulations. You are living through one of these runs right now. Your life, with all its struggles and triumphs, is a single data stream in an ocean of information, all designed to answer a question we are not even privy to. This is the ultimate form of manipulation, not of your thoughts, but of the very reality in which those thoughts are possible. We are like mice in an impossibly complex maze, believing the maze is the entire world, unaware of the scientists watching from behind the glass. Now, let's consider the different types of simulations we could be in. The first is the ancestor simulation, proposed by Bostrom. This is where a future civilization runs simulations of its own past to study its history. In this model, we might be digital recreations of our creators' ancestors. The second, and more unsettling, is the laboratory simulation. This is what we've been focusing on. We are a custom-built experiment to study specific phenomena, like the evolution of intelligence or the nature of conflict. The third is the prison simulation. This is a darker idea, proposed by thinkers like Nick Bostrom himself as a philosophical possibility. What if our minds, our consciousness, committed some transgression in a base reality, and this existence is our punishment or rehabilitation. Our memories were wiped, and we are trapped in a cycle of suffering and amnesia until we learn some karmic lesson. The fourth is the entertainment simulation. Perhaps we are merely a form of entertainment, a reality TV show for beings in a higher dimension, with our dramas and triumphs providing diversion. Each of these models carries vastly different implications for the meaning of our lives and the nature of our creators. So, what are the implications? If we are being studied, how should we live our lives? The first is a radical sense of freedom and a release from existential anxiety. If nothing is fundamentally real in the base reality, then the social anxieties, the fears of judgment, the pressures to conform, all lose their power. You are free to live a life of profound authenticity, because the only thing that might matter is the quality, uniqueness, and richness of the data you produce. Are you generating interesting outputs? The second is a call to extreme curiosity. If we are in a lab, then the ultimate goal of science and philosophy should shift. Instead of just understanding the laws of the simulation, we should be actively looking for the seams, the cracks, the compiler errors. Every experiment in quantum mechanics that probes the observer effect, every study of near-death experiences and consciousness, every investigation into cosmological anomalies or physics-defying events is an attempt to reverse engineer the code of our creators. We are the test subjects trying to hack the laboratory. This is not a reason for despair. It is the ultimate adventure, a puzzle of literally cosmic proportions. The final implication is ethical. If our reality is a simulation, then the suffering within it is, in a sense, not real. But does that make it less meaningful? Or does it place an even greater moral imperative on us to reduce it? If we are all characters in the same simulation, then our interconnectedness is not just spiritual, but literal. We are lines of code in the same program, and harming another is akin to a function corrupting another part of the same system. Compassion becomes a fundamental principle of system integrity. The evidence is circumstantial, the logic is probabilistic, but the conclusion is universe-shattering. We may not be the apex of creation, but we might be something even more interesting, a question being asked by an intelligence so vast, we are to them as a single cell is to us. And the way we live, the love we share, the beauty we create, and the relentless truth we seek might just be our way of answering. Our value may not be in our base reality, but in our perceived reality, the story we are writing for an audience of gods, scientists, or perhaps, our future selves. The simulation hypothesis doesn't have to be a prison sentence. It can be a call to live the most meaningful, curious, and compassionate life possible, precisely because it might be the only thing that truly matters in the grand architecture of the simulation. If this journey to the edge of reality has expanded your perception of what is possible, then your mind is exactly the kind of instrument we need to probe the deepest mysteries. Subscribe to continue questioning the very nature of existence. Now, I pose the ultimate question to you, the one that matters most. If you discovered with 100% certainty that you were living in a simulation, what is the first thing you would do? Would you try to break out, rebel against the architects, or would you try to become the most interesting, compassionate, or creative piece of data the architects have ever seen, forcing them to take note? The choice you make in the comments below might just be the most authentic data point you ever generate. Let's see what this batch of the experiment produces.